Soon after President Uhuru Kenyatta came from Uganda, where he had met President Yoweri Museveni, Kenyatta was very angry with the fact that Raila Odinga had made certain comments regarding his Kenyatta's trip to Uganda.
And I say this to my brother, and he is my brother, by the way, the leader of the opposition, Bwana Raila Odinga here. And let us work together.
Kenyatta invited Raila Odinga to work with him. Now, let's face the truth. Let's face it. There is no way an opposition politician, more so the leader of the opposition, can accept to work with the government. Because the work of the opposition is to keep the government on toes. And what Raila Odinga is doing is that he's simply keeping the Jubilee government on toes. So Uhuru should not take this to be personal. In fact, the only time in Kenya when we saw the opposition working with the government is when Uhuru Kenyatta's leader of the opposition crossed over to join the former president Mwai Kibaki when Kibaki was running for a second term during the rigged 2007 elections. But in reality, opposition does not work with the government.
You know, because when you say that I went to talk about bringing cheap sugar into Kenya, which cheap sugar? Where do you want us to get our shortfall from? I would rather get it from Uganda than from Brazil.
Surely, instead of going to Uganda, why can't Uhuru Kenyatta revive the sugar industry in Kenya? The sugar industry is collapsing in Kenya. And why import sugar from abroad when Kenyan farmers can produce them from within? The other day when we saw Uhuru Kenyatta trying to revive the so-called sugar industry is when he was actually buying politicians with 1 billion Kenyan shillings, that is Ababuna Mwamba and other loyal politicians who are there, Wetangula, Kalwale, Gumo, and the like, when Uhuru went there to bribe them with 1 billion Kenyan shillings in the name of reviving the Mumias sugar factory. To date, that money has never been seen. What people saw was Uhuru handing over a big check of 1 billion Kenyan shillings. The local sugar industry is dying, while at the same time, as this local sugar industry is on its deathbed, Uhuru is going to Uganda to try and bargain for what Raila Odinga called cheap sugar. Surely, what is wrong with accusing Uhuru Kenyatta of going to Museveni to import cheap sugar when Kenyan sugarcane farming has effectively died because of mismanagement, because of corruption, and because of government neglect? What is wrong with that?
Uganda imports $700 million worth of product from Kenya. They do. They only export to us 150 million.
Well, let us remember that Uganda is a landlocked country, and so it has to import goods from Kenya. All Uganda's imports are coming from Kenya. When you are landlocked, you use a country with a seaway, and Kenya, through the port of Mombasa, has a seaway. So the argument that Uganda is importing a lot of stuff from Kenya does not sell. What exactly does Uganda import from Kenya that is worth the amount of billions Uhuru Kenyatta was talking about? Uganda uses Kenya to transit goods. These transited goods cannot amount to importation of goods from Kenya. Uganda imports goods from abroad, and these goods come through the port of Mombasa. So, stop cheating Kenyans.
We must look big and think big for the future of our people.
Very good. But how do you think out of the box when your government is so corrupt? Every week, corruption scandals in the newspapers. The last corruption scandal that was exposed by the Auditor General, out of 1 trillion Kenyan shillings that the government budgeted for, only 1.2% can be accounted for. How do you think big when your government is full of thieves? Why can't you start thinking big by stopping tribalism in the appointment of government officials? Why can't you start thinking big by thinking Kenyan? Because Uhuru Kenyatta is a tribalist who has, populated government offices with members of the Kikuyu ethnic group. Why can't you start, thinking big by thinking out of the Kikuyu House of Mumbi ethnic box? Stop cheating Kenyans. Uhuru Kenyatta keeps on appointing his friends in top positions in government, and these friends keep on stealing money. Money meant for development is stolen. It goes into private pockets. It goes into private bank accounts. It is stolen continuously from the treasury, from the central bank. And now, stealing by the Jubilee government is no longer a rumor. It is not something you doubt. The evidence is there. It has been produced several times. Mpaka Wakenya wakaboeka. So please, stop telling Kenyans to think out of the box. Stop telling Kenyans to think big when the office of the president is thinking small.
If you want to accuse me of something, do it. That now is talking progress as opposed to saying, shut him down, shut him down. But we cannot just criticize each other for the sake.
This is not criticism. This is what is called keeping the government on toes. As the leader of the opposition, it is the responsibility of Raila Odinga to criticize. I'm not holding brief for Raila Odinga, but I do think that Uhuru deserves an answer on the basis of his responses to Raila Odinga. Bwana Uhuru, when you are in government, you must expect to be criticized. In which country does the opposition kiss the government? In which country does the opposition work with the government hand in hand, especially an opposition leader? Tell me, in which country? Expect to be kept on toes. Uhuru is notorious for raising non-issues. When he's supposed to raise the main issues, he raises non-issues. Thank you.